The following video will explain how to clean an M-type linear encoder. It will show the steps that need to be followed and make recommendations so that the linear encoder is not damaged during the process. The following tools are required to clean the linear encoder. 2 metal strips bent into the shapes shown. Tweezers. Metal cutters. Torx screwdriver with interchangeable head. Silicone, grease and alcohol. Step 1 is to remove the end cap as shown. Step 2 is to remove the reader head. This should be done very carefully so as not to scratch the glass. Before removing the sealing lips from the linear encoder, the seal between them must be broken. This can be done as shown using a small screwdriver blade. The sealing lips are held at the extremes using silicone sealant. Sometimes it is necessary to gently tap this area so that the sealing lips can be removed. Once the sealing lips have been removed, it's necessary to clean the channel in which they were situated. This is done by covering the small metal tool with paper and soaking it in alcohol. The tool is then run along the channel where the sealing lips were situated. This aids insertion of the new sealing lips. To clean the lower side of the glass, the metal tool or a small screwdriver blade can be used. This is wrapped in paper and then soaked in alcohol, and the tool is then run along the length of the glass. This operation is repeated until the glass is clean. Once cleaned, the operation should be repeated with dry paper wrapped around the screwdriver blade or the metal tool. The lower glass surface is not as accessible, so a piece of tissue paper must be folded and soaked in alcohol and then inserted between the lower part of the aluminium extrusion and the glass surface. The tissue paper is then run along the complete length of the glass surface using the metal tool as shown. This operation is repeated until the glass is clean. Once the glass has been cleaned, the new sealing lips can be inserted. They should be cut longer than the aluminium extrusion. Grease is applied to the sealing lips before they are introduced into the extrusion. This grease reduces the friction between the reader head and the sealing lips. The sealing lips are then cut to length, allowing a 1 mm or 1/20th of an inch overhang at each end. The sealing lips are then made proud in order to provide the seal. This is done by running a screwdriver blade between them along the whole length of the linear encoder. Great care must be taken not to scratch the glass during this operation. The reader head is then inserted as shown. Care must be taken to insert it the right way round. This can be checked by looking at the profile of the reader head cursor and the orientation of the glass inside the linear encoder. The next step is to insert the N blocks on the linear encoder. It must be noted that on the M linear encoders, the N blocks are not reversible. The internal face of the N block can be used to identify whether it is the left N block or the right N block. Silicon sealant is then applied to the inner face of the N block. Once the linear encoder has been reassembled, it is necessary to check that it functions correctly. This can be done by comparing the count of the repaired linear encoder to a patron linear encoder, using a test bench and a digital readout. The first test is a repeatability test. The reader head is situated at one extreme of the linear encoder and then moved to and fro and then returned to the extreme to check that it repeats to 0. The next test is to check that the linear encoder can find all the I/O reference marks along its length. Once the test procedure has been completed, the reader head can be fixed to the linear encoder using the red transport bracket. This will prevent the reader head and the linear encoder being damaged during transport. The linear encoder is now ready for packaging and to be sent to the customer.